You don't expect your life to unravel because of a single email. But sometimes, all it takes is one quiet action, and everything hidden starts rising to the surface. I was sitting in a flimsy fold-up chair I'd picked up for $12 at a garage sale, watching my phone light up again and again. Names I hadn't heard from in 9 days suddenly reappeared like ghosts with urgency. My mother, then my aunt, then my mother again, and finally my cousin Petra, who only ever called when something had already gone terribly wrong. I ignored every call, because 23 minutes earlier I had done something simple. I forwarded an email, no message, no explanation, not even a subject line of my own. And somehow, that silence spoke louder than anything I could have written. But to understand why that mattered, you need to go back. Because the night I was thrown out of my house wasn't the beginning. It was just the moment everyone stopped pretending. My name is Dara Oye. I'm 31, and I work as a healthcare records compliance auditor. It's not glamorous. My job is to trace documentation, follow inconsistencies, and figure out where information goes when people assume no one is paying attention. Over time, that kind of work changes how you think. You start noticing patterns. You start trusting records more than people. And most importantly, you learn that nothing truly disappears. At the time, I had been staying with my mother and stepfather in Raleigh for about 4 months. My lease had fallen through, and I was waiting for a sublet to open up. It wasn't ideal, but families are supposed to tolerate inconvenience. Or at least, that's what I believed. My half-sister Simone lived about 40 minutes away with her husband, Crispin. Their marriage had always seemed complicated in ways that were hard to define. Crispin was steady, observant, the kind of person who remembered small details about your life and followed up on them later. Simone, on the other hand, had a way of adjusting herself depending on who was watching. Looking back now, I can see the cracks in their marriage had been there for a long time. What I didn't know was that Simone had already decided how that story would end and who would take the blame. It happened on a Tuesday evening. I was in the kitchen reheating rice when I heard her voice. Not the words at first, just the tone. That specific pitch she used when she needed an audience. By the time I stepped into the living room, she was already crying. Not messy crying, not uncontrolled. Measured, controlled, practiced. She told my mother and stepfather that I had been interfering in her marriage, that I had been sharing private conversations with Crispin's brother, Theo, that I had been quietly sabotaging things from within the family while pretending to stay neutral. I didn't interrupt. I didn't even react, because the way my mother looked at me told me everything. She had already decided what was true. My stepfather didn't even meet my eyes. He just said, "This isn't going to work anymore," and walked off. A minute later, he came back with a plastic storage bin. That was it. No discussion, no questions, no defense. I stood there while Simone watched him, her expression carefully composed, but I could see it. That flicker of relief, of control. That was the moment I understood something deeply uncomfortable. There was no version of this conversation where I would be believed, so I didn't argue. I packed what I could into the bin, called a car, and left. From the parking lot of my new place, a 1-bedroom sublet I had been hesitating on because of the rent, I signed the lease right there on my phone. The next day, my friend Ren showed up with groceries and a focus that made it clear she had already been thinking about this before she even knocked on my door. She listened to everything I said without interrupting. Then she asked one question. What was Simone afraid of before she decided to be afraid of you? I didn't have an answer. But the question stayed with me. And that's when I did what I always do when something doesn't add up. I stopped thinking about feelings and started looking for evidence. For the next few days, I treated my own life like an audit, not what I suspected, not what I felt, only what I could verify. Ren mentioned something she'd heard, barely even gossip, about a man named Fletcher Obi. Someone who coordinated regional health initiatives and had been spending a noticeable amount of time with Simone over the past year at various planning retreats. It wasn't proof, but it was a direction, and directions matter. When I started digging carefully, a pattern began to form. Simone hadn't panicked and made accusations in the moment. She had been preparing them. Weeks before that Tuesday, she had already been testing the story, calling relatives, asking leading questions, planting ideas. She wasn't reacting to a problem. She was building a narrative, and my name was already written into it. If you're still following this, pause for a second, because what happens next changes everything. If you enjoy stories where the truth unfolds piece by piece, make sure you're paying attention, because the smallest detail is about to become the biggest turning point. 2 weeks earlier, I had sent a routine inquiry to a hotel outside Raleigh. It was the kind of place that hosted conferences and private retreats. I suspected, based on how booking systems work, that my email might have accidentally remained attached to a reused reservation profile from an event I had helped coordinate over a year ago. It was a long shot, but long shots are still data points. On Thursday morning, I got a reply. They confirmed it. My email had indeed been mistakenly left attached to a corporate booking profile. And as part of correcting the error, they sent me the administrative records that had been generated before the issue was fixed. I opened the attachment. Read it once, then again, then I didn't move for 4 full minutes. Because what I was looking at wasn't just a mistake. It was a timeline. 2 adjacent hotel rooms, 3 separate bookings across 6 months, one under Fletcher Obie's name, the other under a corporate alias. But the billing contact, it traced back to Simone. Check-in times within 40 minutes of each other. Late checkouts, repeated overlap. It wasn't speculation anymore. It wasn't even gossip. It was a record. And records don't lie. I forwarded the file to Ren. She called me within minutes and said only one thing. That's why she needed someone else to blame. And in that moment, everything finally made sense. I knew what I had to do next. But what I didn't know was how far this was about to go. And trust me, what happened when I confronted her. That's where everything truly fell apart. I didn't wait. That same evening, I drove straight to Simone's townhouse with the files still open on my phone, the evidence sitting there quietly, patiently, like it had been waiting longer than I had to be seen. She opened the door wearing a gray cardigan, composed as always. Not surprised to see me, just mildly inconvenienced, as if I had shown up a few minutes earlier than expected. I didn't waste time easing into anything. "I want to know why you used my name," I said, before anyone even thought to ask what you were hiding. She let out a short laugh, dismissive, controlled. "You've been talking to Crispin." I didn't respond. I just held up my phone. For a split second, barely noticeable, her eyes shifted. Not panic, not shock, recognition. Then it was gone. "Where did you get that?" she asked, her tone flattening. "From the hotel," I replied. "You reused an old booking profile and forgot to remove my contact. They fixed it and sent me everything." Silence stretched between us. Then came the performance. First, denial, quick and automatic. Then, wounded dignity, how invasive this was, how inappropriate. And finally, offense, turning it outward, questioning my boundaries instead of her actions. I let her move through all of it, because I wasn't there to argue. I was there to listen. And eventually, she said the one thing that ended any doubt I had been holding on to. I needed it to land somewhere that wasn't me. Not an apology, not regret, just a statement, calculated, honest in the worst way. I stood there for a moment, letting it settle. Then I turned and left. Halfway to my car, my phone started ringing. Simone, then my mother, then Roland, one after another. I didn't answer. I drove home in silence, walked into my apartment, opened my laptop, and wrote an email. 3 paragraphs. That was all it took. I named the accusation clearly. I explained the administrative correction. I attached the records. And I ended it with one sentence. "I am not available to continue absorbing blame that was built to protect someone else's choices." I sent it to my mother, Roland, and Crispin. Then I waited. The responses came fast. Too fast. "Simone, please don't send that to anyone else." "My mother, we were wrong. Please just give us one chance." "Roland, this needs to stay between us." Not one of them asked if it was true, because they already knew. Crispin called about an hour later. His voice was quiet, not shaken, not emotional. Just certain. Like someone who had been holding onto a suspicion for a long time and had finally been given permission to stop doubting it. "You didn't deserve any of this," he said. Nothing more, no dramatics, no over-explanation, just the truth stated plainly. He mentioned his attorney would be reaching out soon. Then the call ended. 3 days later, I was at work when my director appeared at my office door. She stepped inside, closed it gently, and said she had heard there might be something personal brushing up against professional circles I was connected to. "If anyone tries to make that your problem here," she said, "send them to me." I nodded, held it together until she left, then sat there for a while, staring at nothing in particular. Because that was the moment it really hit me, this wasn't just a family issue anymore. It had almost become something else entirely. Weeks passed. Slowly, things began to settle, but not in the way I had expected. The sublet I once saw as temporary started to feel stable, intentional. I bought a floor lamp, learned the quiet rhythm of the building after 10 p.m., the kind of silence that no longer felt like something was wrong. Ren came over one weekend, and we painted the kitchen wall a deep, deliberate green. She said the color felt honest. I didn't argue with her. My mother called a few times. I listened to one of the voicemails, just once. There was hesitation in her voice. Regret, maybe, but it felt late, like something arriving only because there was no other option left. I didn't call back. Roland sent a message asking if we could talk. I read it. Set my phone face down, made coffee, and let the silence answer for me. Simone showed up once, early evening. Alone, no performance this time, no audience. She said things that sounded like understanding, but they were shaped like requests. She wanted me to soften Crispin's position. She wanted this to quiet down. She wanted things to go back to something manageable. "I'm still your sister," she said. I looked at her for a long moment before answering. "You were," I said, "until you decided my name was easier to spend than your own." That was the first time I saw something real break through. Not control, not calculation, anger. And strangely, that felt more honest than anything else she had shown me. She left without saying goodbye. Here's what I understand now, something I didn't know the night I stood on the curb with my life packed into a plastic bin. The documents didn't create the truth. They just removed everyone's ability to ignore it. The email from the hotel wasn't some grand revelation. It was an accident, a clerical correction, a small administrative oversight. But it arrived at the exact point where everything hidden intersected with everything that had been done to me. And that intersection? That was the only place the truth could exist without distortion. My mother eventually apologized. The kind of apology that comes when denying something becomes more uncomfortable than admitting it. It mattered, but not in the way she probably hoped. Because there's a difference between regret and accountability. And once you see that difference clearly, you can't unsee it. I still live in that apartment. I renewed the lease. I sleep well now, which wasn't always the case. And I've stopped measuring my life against the version I thought I was supposed to have. There's just one question that stayed with me through all of this. When someone only comes back after the truth forces them to, when they choose you not because they finally see clearly, but because they ran out of ways to avoid it, is that love? Or is it just fear, finally learning where it can't hide anymore? If this story made you stop and think, even for a moment, stay with stories like this. There's always more beneath the surface than what people choose to show.